Hello, everybody. This is Raina from Garden District Bookshop, and welcome to Virtual Happy Hour. I am so excited to talk this evening with Fred Dust. He's a designer, an educator, an advisor to business leaders and social leaders. He is an author of Making Conversation, 7 Essential Elements of Meaningful Communication, which is really great for Virtual Happy Hour. I'm going to learn some stuff. You're going to learn some stuff. And I'm going to click the button here and welcome Fred into Virtual Happy Hour. Hi there, Fred.
Hello. Actually, I feel like you made me sound boring the way you describe it. It's like, I'm like way more interesting.
Look, I've got your bio and it just goes, it's like five paragraphs. And I'm like, okay, there's just a lot happening here. But here's the thing, I'm not the conversation expert. So,
but by the way, never say you're an expert in anything because you're going to find out really quickly that you're not an expert if you do. Although I have been, it's been funny. Like my publishers, when you publish a book, like your publishers are like, when people hate you on Twitter, don't respond. And I'm like, okay, except for the fact that it's like, I have been, and I've been turning like Twitter haters into super fans. It's been really fun.
They literally tell you not to respond to anyone or someone who dislikes it.
Someone who dislikes something. And so basically I've been like, no, I'm going to respond. And they're like, oh, well, you kind of can do that. Like, so it's like, it's fun for you. So go ahead and do it. So I'm like, okay, do it. So
that's weird because like all of the social media classes that I've taken, they tell you the opposite.
They tell you the opposite.
They tell you the opposite. So you're supposed to respond professionally. Don't try to argue. Don't get sucked in, but respond professionally. I apologize for blah, 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 blah. Maybe would you like, let's meet via DM to discuss it further. Like they tell you to reach out because you can see that interaction publicly. So everybody else can see it. So It's like,
I've been doing exactly that, but I've been doing it a little bit more informally. Like I've been basically like, hey, hey vegans, I know you're mad at me because I was on PBS NewsHour and like I said, that I talked to my hunters. I'm like, just bring some venison if you're going to hunt on my property. And the vegans were furious. And I'm like, hey vegans, like probably I have a lot of friends who are vegans. You'll probably make me a vegan one day. And like, I bet we will, it's like, or right. It's like, I've gotten the white privilege thing and I'm like, yeah, it's like, it's
surreal and I'm trying to deal with it, but
yeah, exactly. But I'm white. And it's like, and I've gotten the, my favorite one was McKinsey Quarterly did a piece on the book and somebody wrote tweeted saying, okay, wait, how does Making Conversation have to do with suppression of voices in Putin's Russia? And I was like, huh. Well, I'm a gay man, and I'm pretty much against the slaughter of Chechnya and LGBTQ people. So it doesn't like, and they're like, oh, sorry, it's not for you. This is for McKinsey. And I'm like, oh, well, you can hate on McKinsey all you want.
Go ahead. But being better at conversation, all different kinds of conversations, feels like it would help.
Yeah,
everywhere.
I think it's true, and and unlike most people, I don't blame social media for the reason why like conversation has kind of fallen down. I think and frankly, I honestly think that we have always been good at conversation. We've been. I mean, I think that's what made us apex predators and agrarians because we could actually talk to animals. It's like, and so we're all in conversation whether we know it or not.
I'm learning, I have a 14-year-old son. Oh. So I'm learning that conversation, being fluid and willing to change and learning different ways to communicate are very important. There is no guidebook to how to communicate with a teenage boy, but it is something I'm learning like as a mom. Like I can't communicate to him the way that I did even like a couple of years ago because he's growing up, but also he doesn't have any idea what he's saying at the same time. So like learning how to navigate that is a lot to do with how you communicate with him.
Well, it's interesting, Raina, because I'll tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody, but my husband, I finally 2 weeks ago, I was like, we need to talk about having a child. I want to have a kid. And he was like, nope. And I was like, you don't get to just say no. And so I'm getting a little feedback. I'm going to shift this a little bit. Is that better? Oh, you might be.
Yeah, I can hear you fine, actually.
Okay, cool. And so what I did is I went and I let it go for a couple days, and I was like, we're gonna get a couples therapist, and we're gonna have this conversation. So we've been doing it twice a week. We've been having a conversation about that. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's. I will tell you that the first time I brought it up, I also got a no. So, and that was 15 years ago. So persistence is key.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like there's absolutely, and everyone always says this. I don't think this is whether you are you're adopting or whether you are having a biological child or anything sort of in between. Is like you're not ready. You're not prepared. Totally. There's no, like, for anything else, like, you're gonna do as best you can up front, and then you're gonna wing it with that.
That's totally it. And it's like, and what's so great is that this therapist is so funny because she's actually, it's so funny because she's actually quite funny. And so you're doing couples therapy over Zoom about like a kind of this big topic, and she's just like, she's so hysterical. Like at one point the other day, she was like, "Oh wait, I'm picking up a message," and we're like, "Wait, are you getting something from like outer space?" And she's like, "Oh no, there's a message on my screen that I don't want to have." And she's like, I'm like, if we recorded them, they would be like good television, I believe.
So, and you guys didn't know her so have you met her in person at all?
No, I mean, what happened is I basically, I have a therapist who I've worked with for years, just because it's like mostly on family stuff. And it was originally about like leaving IDEO, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't care about IDEO. Like, let's talk about your family." And so it's like, it's all that. And I've gotten to really know her well. And it was her recommendation. And I was just like, oh yeah, anyone she recommends is going to be great. And she's been fantastic. She's like really, really good and fair, and it's funny. And my relationship with my husband is already better after two sessions. Even if we end up not having a kid, we'll be in a better place for it. So
yeah, so my family, all three of us have been meeting with a family therapist for about 6 months or so now.
Yeah,
and we did not know her before this, and of course all of their meetings are via Zoom. So came highly recommended, blah blah blah, all those things. So I was prepared for good, but having never actually met in person, it's so you have no idea what you're expecting. And weirdly enough, our therapist is really funny too. Yeah. And I'm hoping that continues. I hope that it's not like, I'm picturing this maybe because you're via screen, that there's more like, it's a little more loose. Yeah. But I'm hoping,
it's weird because it's like
in person happens.
We were on a call today, and my husband was like, "Well, I know that I shouldn't ask you this, but do you have kids?" And she was like, "You can ask me anything." And she was like, "Yeah, I have 2 kids. I'm pro kids. That doesn't mean I'm pro you're having kids, but that's my stance." So it was like it was pretty cool actually.
Yeah.
I like this structure. I really do. So.
I'm enjoying the Zoom therapy. I don't know, because I've never done in-person therapy, so it'll be exciting on the other end of this when I'm actually like sitting on the proverbial couch, going, "Well, what do we say?"
Well, and my therapist is like this super activist therapist. So she's like, "You're gonna call your mother," and I'm like, "Okay." It's like I'll be like, I may not go do this, and she's like, "No, yes, you are going to go do that," and I'm like, "Okay." It's like
sometimes that's just what we need. We need that person to just go, "No, stop beating around the bush about this. Just go do it. Live with the consequences. Maybe you love it, maybe you hate it, but you've done it."
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's like that's. I mean, just a little bit of a funny story. What I didn't tell you is that actually, why I'm here is I'm actually applying for a grown-up job, but it's for a really interesting institution. Like it's a very important cultural institution in the world.
Okay, wait, now, so tell everybody. So Fred is not at home. You are in Atlanta in a hotel room.
I am in a hotel room in Atlanta, and I flew from Delta. I flew Delta 2 nights ago. It was like the first time ever. And I've flown since the beginning of the pandemic. And I went to this person's house. She knew I was coming. I didn't show up.
Good to know. Okay. That's going to be important later. I think there's a story that's going to make that important later.
Totally. And I sat down kind of at her feet because it was like on the front porch. And I basically was like, "I want to do this." And she was like, "Okay, change your clothes." And so I brought a change of clothes, and she's like, "Let's go to my country club and we'll talk there." So we went to the country club. I was in a room that was like, it was like a banquet size room with just like 6 people. And we had a conversation. And this is my favorite moment. At some point, my husband was like, "David, we need to go to the bathroom." And David's like, "I don't have to go to the bathroom." He's like, "David, you need to go to the bathroom." and he goes to the bathroom and he was like, the three of them needed time to talk without us there. And it was
like, okay, do that secret. Yeah. See, ladies know if another lady says, oh, let's go to the bathroom, you just, oh, okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
No, my husband was just like, what are you talking about?
Weird. It's weird. Okay. It's good. It's so
Anyways, sorry, it's like, but yeah. So, I mean, what's been going on for you this week?
Well, okay. So we are starting to plan some of our first real in-person events. Now the vaccines are happening and the regulations are loosening here. Louisiana still has some regulations, and we still have a mask mandate. Thankfully, we're like one of the only states in the South still with a mask mandate.
Yeah.
But we are slowly at the bookshop starting to plan some in-person events. And just like, you don't realize how there's all these logistics, not just from the same things that you did a year ago, but then like, how are we going to change this, and how are you going to regulate people, and how do you have light hors d'oeuvres but also wear a mask? And how
I know. It's funny. I'm planning a theater group that does live theater outside. Basically was like, they contacted me, cold called me, and they were like, we'd like you to do some, like, they're doing they're doing a Nina Simone musical, but their community is mostly white. And so they would like, we'd love you to design a couple of community conversations that would happen after these things. So I'm basically gonna be like in a theater troupe for like 2 months this summer, but it's gonna be weird.
Awesome. Summer stock.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically like summer stock theater, and it's like, and it's gonna be like live, like under a tent, masked. It's just fascinating.
That sounds like so much fun. I
know. It's like I'm so into it. So it's really like we have a lot of really amazing things coming up. I'm really looking forward to it. I can't remember when I was there, you guys were about to do what's his name? Is Walter Isaacson's new book.
Walter Isaacson. Yeah, that was our first in-person event in a year. And we held that offsite. And at this huge, beautiful house in the Garden District, this just massive yard.
Yeah.
And we had plenty of space for everybody to like stay 6 feet apart and all of that. And now we're starting to plan some of our first like in-house events. So like, it's taking some things we learned from that, but won't necessarily work in this space, and then how we can do all that. And our first one is going to be April 30th, I think. So we still have a little bit to plan, but that's kind of where we are now, is like, okay. And once you say yes to the first one, then somebody else is like, I hear you're doing in-person events. I'm like, okay, wait a second. Are we just doing this one, right? So there's a lot, this week has been a lot of like figuring out the logistics of the planning to get that. And of course we want to make it happen, but like.
Yeah. Well, what's funny about, I don't know if you're the guy who I can't remember the name of the person who runs the shop, but I was telling him that when I used to go to Aspen a lot, and Walter Isaacson would always he would always be like, "Hey, you come here," and I'd be like, "Yes, sir." And he'd be like, he met me 1,000 times. It's like, and he'd be like, "Help me stand up." And I'm like, "Okay." And then my favorite time, the only time he'd ever use my name is he was like, "Fred, come here." And I was like, who's always summoning me somewhere. And I'm like, "Yes, Walter." And he's like, "You need to start Aspen, the design festival again." And I'm like, "No, Walter, you do that." It's like, right? I'm like, not so much. That's
your thing. Yeah. I support you, but no.
But you do it.
Right, exactly. No, he's always been so sweet, like, because he's had a place in New Orleans and everything, and he's in the bookshop a bit. And I've lived there. I've worked there for 6 years now, so I've seen a few times. And yeah, he's so recognizable too. Like, once you really do meet him, you're like, okay, that's definitely Walter. That's definitely Walter. Like,
I adore him. I really do. It's like I've never read any of his books, but I should. It's like,
oh my gosh, I love to listen to the audio of his books.
Oh really?
Yeah, because they're really they're so obviously well written, but they're in depth without being too technical.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, I can hear that nonfiction. I love listening to nonfiction.
It's so funny because I did my audiobook as he does as well. And it's like, cause he's got a great voice, but it's like, And what's really interesting is if you write your books yourself, which Walter does, it's like then it's like when you do the audiobook, it's so genuine. Like it's like you can really feel the person in a way. And so a lot of people who've listened to the book are like, oh my God, it's really like it's like being in a conversation with you. It's like in this really interesting way. So it's been really nice. So
those are the best. And when the author reads their own book, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, they do. Where the inflection goes. Know what you mean.
Well, and not only that, for me, like my experience was not like Obama's experience reading his audiobook. My experience was like I was in 120-degree sound because it was like so hot, like sound booth. Like the audio engineer was like, the director was like in my head, in my like in headphones, and she was like, just take off your clothes because like you're too hot and we can't see you anyway. So I was literally like pretty much naked in the audio booth, like having like these weird, almost quasi-religious experiences because you weren't allowed to eat and you weren't allowed to really drink water because it's like, it actually affects your voice.
Right.
And so, and if you eat, stomach noise happens. So it was extreme. And I love a good extreme experience. Wow. Yeah, it was really fun.
Okay, so was that like, is that the way it always is at that particular studio? It was like the air conditioner was out or whatever? It was just
like a particularly like insanely hot day. And it's like, it was COVID. So you weren't allowed to like leave and take breaks. And I really wanted to like, I was on book tour and I wasn't on book tour. I was just busy. And so I was like, we compressed 3 days into 2 days. And like the director was definitely like, oh, I can hear you crying. I want more crying. Like, get more crying in here. And I'm just...
You're like, I'm dying of sweat. These aren't tears.
Yeah, exactly. No, although there's a point in the book where I talk about my grandmother seeing Jesus and I'm like, I think I'm seeing Jesus. Sexy Jesus, but it was what it was. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Okay, so I have a question for you about like virtual happy hour, sort of.
Okay.
So I know when you were in the bookstore, you talked about the different places you are and the types of conversations you have in the different spaces. How has like doing all these Zoom events and live streaming events made you think differently maybe about conversation? Or do you have different types of conversations in these types of settings versus when you're...
Well, I mean, you and I talked about this a bit before we started this, which is that, in fact, I think this has been quite empowering for a lot of people. I mean, it's like one of the things that I've talked to, like, with a lot of people who are like, sorry, my hair is insane, but it's like C-suite people are like, that their people have, they feel like their people are more humanized for them because they're seeing them in their homes and they're understanding them in different ways. Like, I gave a lecture, I told you, at Stern yesterday, and at NYU Stern, and like, the kids were just like showing up and showing themselves in this really interesting way. They would dress up for things. It was like really, really cool. And then, it's interesting is it's like, what happens is like, sometimes you'll get like 4 people and sometimes you get like 1,000 and like, but it doesn't really matter because those conversations are so different, right? So like 1,000 is really, hey, May, nice to see you. May, by the way, a secret to remembering people's names. I have one, Linda, because I'm really good at it. Oh no, I actually, but it doesn't really matter because I think the way I remember names is I used to have my assistant follow me and tell me the names of the people I was meeting before. But I'll think of a better way, Linda. So it's a really good thing. May actually lives in the Garden District, and I stayed at her house when I was at there, and she's amazing. She's a like y'all should know May if you don't. She's an amazing artist, speech pathologist, and just really amazing all around person.
Well, thank you, May, because this might not have happened if you hadn't have lent Fred your space to stay in, and then we wouldn't have met, and then we wouldn't be here.
And I always am like May, maybe let me buy, because she's got it's a 4-plex, and I'm like let me just buy the one that we stayed in, and then we'll all just live together happily in this thing. Linda asked about if there's a secret way to remember people's names, and I think. Here's the thing, Linda, that's really interesting about that. Sorry, do you mind if I answer that, Raina?
No, please, yes. That's what we're here for. If anybody has a question, please ask.
Yeah, is that I think the thing about, so I actually, I eventually get names pretty well. Like if I hear them and meet somebody a couple times, it's especially hard, I think, right now with the amount of people that we're meeting in an online context. So, but here's the problem for me, which is even stranger, is that I'll remember everything about a person, literally everything I've heard about a person, except forget their name. And like, what's funny, Linda, that you will learn is that all people really care about is that you remember their name. And so it's this really interesting thing. So it's like I can say to like Raina, like well, it's helpful now that we have the names underneath us. It's like I consider Raina like, hey Raina, like, how's your 14-year-old son doing? Like, it's like what's going on? Like, you know, it's like when did you move here? I can tell you how. It's like everything that we've talked about, but I don't know, Raina, if I'll remember your name tomorrow. So it's sort of a crazy one. So Linda, I'll keep thinking. I really believe one of the things that really works is mnemonics in some way. And one of the things I talk about in the book is even how like space itself actually can be a mnemonic, you know? So it's like you can say like, I met Raina when the sun was shining, you know, because it's like cool. So it's like that. So any kind of little twist might actually be a way to do it in that case. So although actually I met Raina when it was raining, I think
so. Yes, because you were talking about renting bikes, and I was like, boy, you better hurry.
And I got swamped. I got totally wet. Like it's like so. It's like yeah. I met you like it was raining for a couple days actually. So yeah. There you go.
That works either way. You can use my name either way.
Yeah. But so you were asking, so the question that you were asking, sorry, was about how has things changed? I think in many ways, I feel like it's empowered us to kind of connect to people in different ways, to reach out to different people in different ways. I've been doing this live since March 1. I've been doing convenings, gatherings. I'm a designer in residence for Rockefeller. I do all kinds of things like that. And so I feel like it's really been, it's pretty empowering to kind of to do it. And it can feel actually informal and more fun and easier. Raina, you made an observation about your own experience. I'd love to hear kind of how it's affected you.
Oh, about doing these virtual events. And I have no idea what I said earlier. So I'm just going to wing it. See, because you're good at that. And I meant every word, but I don't know exactly what I said. But I know that doing these events has changed my ability to be more outgoing, because when I first started these were kind of born out of necessity. COVID had started and we didn't know what to do. And here we go. Let's just throw some live virtual event up there and see what happens.
Right.
And you start out, you know, when I started out, I asked all my friends, you know, and that was great for a few weeks. Everybody said, yes, come on, isn't this fun and exciting? And then you run out of people that you really know, and you have to start putting yourself out there a little bit more to, you know, throw it out there, see if they get, you know, worst case scenario, they say no and no big deal, or they don't answer. That's happened a couple of times. But most of the time people say yes. And the longer it's gone, the more outgoing I've become, not just with this, not just behind a screen, but I've learned say hi in person, like get out there a little bit more, say, yeah, I do virtual happy hour every week. Is that something you'd be interested in doing? Cool. I never would have said anything like that. I mean,
who was the most surprising person who said yes that you've talked to, just out of curiosity?
Wow. Let's see. So a couple of people that I don't know, to everyone they would be the most surprising, but to me, Bridget Kemmerer, who was on a few weeks ago, actually, and Kaylin Bayron, who was on last week. Both of those are authors that I have just loved their books. I just love their books. And you know what happens? I'm just gonna. I mean, because I do the social media for the bookstore,
right?
I usually make first contact via Twitter or Instagram, because that's where I have liked the most of your posts. The most of the interaction has been through that. And they both were like, yeah, sure, let's pick a date. And I was like,
well, that's actually, I'll tell you a funny story. So like one of my favorite, I'll tell you the three experiences of meeting people. So one of my favorite meetings ever was I was at a Planned Parenthood gala, and I was standing next to Meryl Streep. I wasn't with her, but she was next to me. Mm-hmm. And there was a young actress next to me who assumed that I was with Meryl Streep. And so she was like, will you introduce me to Meryl Streep? And I was like, Sure. And so I was like, excuse me, Meryl, I'm Fred Dust. I work with Planned Parenthood. And she was like, how nice. And I was like, but this young lady, I wanted to introduce her. And Meryl Streep grabbed my face and pulled it really close. And she was like, the young lady can introduce herself. And so she was basically like, stop
Right.
me. Right.
Yeah.
But what happened is the paparazzi thought she had kissed me. And so the picture was like, who's Meryl Streep kissing? And so that's how she and I became Instagram friends. So I have her like private Instagram account. And then Patrick Dempsey reached out after PBS NewsHour and started DMing me. And eventually he just texted me. And then now we just kind of will text chat. Everyone's like, well, when he's like depressed because he's going back to set, because he lives across from me in Maine. So it's like, I'm going to go do something, I think, at the Dempsey Center at some point. And then my favorite was I saw this guy, Tristan Dittweiler. He does Stan clothing. And he was on the cover of the New York Times fashion section, I think. And it was like men's clothing is going on a quilt trip. He's like 23-year-old, super hot model, and but he's also a fashion designer. And I told my social media person, I was like, find his phone number, and I have all kinds of his videos. It's like, I was wearing it's so because of just reaching out directly. So I'm just like, reach out.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely what I've learned. Just like I said, worst case scenario, they're gonna say no or not answer. I mean, nobody's gonna be like, I can't believe you tweeted me. Okay, cool. Like, no one's gonna be mad. They're just gonna be like, no, I'm busy, or they're so busy they didn't answer.
Well, I am a little surprised. Like, it's like, as I've been going out and doing this circuit, how many people are like, my contract is like my contract like is basically that I only give you 10 minutes to plan the session. And it's like there's a lot of people or it has to be entirely like an interview style, and like nobody can actually ask questions. And so it's like like there's a I don't know. There's a secret thing. What's a COVID-2?
Right?
That's like that's a shibboleth. It's like something where it's like only you know what that is. Can you definitely tell us what so COVID-2 is?
It's just gonna be a typo. No,
I thought it might be
probably something very exciting.
I thought it was something like New Orleans-y. Like it could be some kind of French thing. I mean,
It does look French.
What do you think Cove-2 would be like? I don't know. It's really interesting. Well, it's like, I don't know. We'll have to keep guessing at some point.
She'll answer.
So I think I was telling you that like if Charles Harling, hi Raina, greetings from Chuck in Port Charlotte. I really enjoy the Raina show.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you. I do know Chuck. Chuck is a good family friend who lives in Port Charlotte. Yeah.
Thank you, Charles. And I actually have to say, I really love the Raina show as well. It's like it's been a blast to be on. So I really appreciate all the good the kind words. I told you that before that I tweeted today that if people showed up, I would tell them a story that I haven't told.
Yes.
Are you up for the story?
I am in. I got a very, very brief, so I know kind of what it's about, but I do not know the story, so I'm very excited.
Okay, and it looks like May's keyboard keeps switching to French, and she's like happy that I did an endorsement for Stan Clothing, so somebody should put. Oh, and Jen, that's really
yes.
Wanting something someone else has. Which, by the way, I have a painting in my house in Brooklyn that says "I always want what you have," and it's like a crown on one side and a brown beanie on the other. And it was painted for me by a friend because she would always be like, "Oh, I ordered wrong. I should have ordered what you ordered." And so it was. So yes, so both definitions work. A COVID-2 is really good. Do check out Stan Clothing if you get a chance. It's like you can follow him on Stan Clothing on Instagram, and you'll know why you want to follow him once you go. But so speaking of that, I'll tell you the story of May. You're gonna think this is insane. I had my first live stalker. And it was about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and it was in Rome, Georgia. And are you sitting down? So we're at a restaurant. the waiter comes and brings us our menu. Pretty gruff, like tall, strapping, really attractive, like guy, like it's like gruff, whatever. And he basically is like, he's like, my husband's like, well, he's not going to talk to you. And I was like, that's fine. It's like, but so first of all, first rule there is never take a challenge from your husband to make somebody want to talk to you. So I started chatting with him. He was really open. He had this really nice kind of personality. And while he was talking, he told us that he was in fact an exotic dancer and a sex worker. And I was like, okay, respect. Like I'm down with that. And then he said that he really wanted to not be there. He wanted to be in Key West. He wanted to go to Key West, and I was like, okay. And he's like, and I was like, so why didn't you go? And he was like, well, actually, I got a woman pregnant as I was coming through Atlanta doing dancing, and she's kind of made me stay, and I have to kind of pay for the child and whatever. And so I'm basically working as a waiter, even though I'm an exotic dancer and I love dancing. And I was like, ooh, okay, I just opened something really deep here, and I don't know how I feel about it. And so I was like, thanks, we're going to go. And I signed the bill, which of course had my room number on it. And we went back to our house, like the cottage we were in, and we're sitting and talking, and there's a knock at the door. So I go to the door, and it's him, and he's brought a dessert, which is 2 words. One's a fruit and one's a kind of container. So you guys happy to guess? Anyone who guesses, I'm happy to send you like a free book or something like that. But it's like, do you have any guesses, Raina, of what the name of the dessert was that he was holding?
No.
Okay.
I'm not going to guess wrong.
I'll give you a hint a little later. But so so I grabbed the dessert. I say, thank you very much. I was like, you have to get off my porch, but in exchange, I'm going to give you my phone number and you can text me in the morning. So I give him my phone number because I was like, I had to commit to this guy. Like, it's like I had actually opened something up. I couldn't like just kind of shut it down. So I got a text in the morning and it's like, oh, sorry, who gets a dessert? He's like, can I come in and party? And I'm like, meaning, yeah. And so I'm like, you have to get off my porch and like, and text me in the morning. So he texts me and he's like, it's 8 a.m. He's like, want to go get a drink and party. And my husband is like, just tell him that your husband doesn't like this. And I'm like, no, David, because that's going to put the focus on you. We don't want that to happen. Right. And so basically I texted and I said, listen, I'm working. So I don't actually, I was on a vacation and I don't really drink during the day. And I was like, and by the way, that's not the kind of relationship this is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this book. So I give him my book and I was like, read the book and then call me when you're done. And we'll talk and see if we can get you help. And he was like, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to it.
Wow. That is skills, my friend. That is like...
Isn't that like crazy? Wow. And it's funny. I just talked about it with some people who, of the Stern students, because it was about, I was doing a class on crisis navigation. And I was a crisis conversation. I was like, that was a crisis conversation. Like I had to slow down. I had to think about what I was doing next. I had to kind of make a really serious. Oh, and then I got out of town, by the way. I was like, I'm out of here. I'm going to Dollywood. It's like, so I went off to Dollywood and that was the end. So, but.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, you were kind of given the luxury of that's not where you live, so you were able to not stay for very long after the interaction. But at the same time, I mean, kudos to you, sir, thinking on your feet so well, and then recognizing that, like, as much as he's approaching you, he's probably looking for, he's looking for attention for himself.
I think that's right, and I think what's so interesting about it is that it's like, it's like. And that's kind of that's the first chapter of the book is about commitment. And it's like, if you're going to get into a conversation with someone, commit to the person and commit to, and really there. And I was like, I did this. It's my responsibility to actually kind of commit to this guy and kind of get through. And what I think, and I said this to you, we both got happy endings in a way.
Right. Yeah.
They just I don't think it's the happy ending he had expected. And do you have any guesses on what the?
No, just tell me.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. It was bananas in a jar.
Fun. Okay. I like also how he was fearlessly like he felt that out for just a minute and then he was like, so
yeah. It was banana, it was like a couple bananas, a jar, and caramel pudding. And I was just like, well, you get a point for visual language.
Right. No beating around the bush here. I see that and I respect it. Thank you.
Anyway, so that was the thing. So anyway.
Who knew Rome, Georgia was so exciting?
I
Would not have guessed that.
Jen, it's a total shock. I'm sorry, Jen. That was a thing. Yeah, that's the most excitement Rome, Georgia has seen in a long time, I think.
Like I've mostly just driven through Rome, Georgia.
That's why that's what most wise people do.
Yeah.
That's so true. It was beautiful. It was really nice. And I really, this guy was like, you know, he was a good guy. He really meant well. And I feel for him. So. Absolutely. Yeah.
One of the things that I know you mentioned in your book too is creative listening.
Yes.
Which is another thing that this situation has made me get better at. But that was definitely one of the hardest things. That's one of the hardest things, I think, in the conversations that I have in general. And I think a lot of people, because talking is easy for most people. I talk about you, talk about myself, talk about the weather once you get me started, but then really listening. And then when you mention creative listening, that's a whole other step. Will you just touch on that a little bit? Because for me, that was one thing that I really
and in the process, I can actually answer Melody Haskell's question, which was like, we'd love to hear about how to take on generational differences in conversation, because I think that's a classic place where we see kind of like breakdowns. So my general feeling, like there's a term called active listening, which is kind of like if I were talking and you're not like this right now, and you would just be like, yeah, go on. You know, it's like whatever. That's actually not listening. That's actually just kind of like me getting to talk, and like you can kind of do anything. And so I'm pretty much against the notion of active listening. And so I'm really focused on the idea that you should like lean in. You should really feel the energy of somebody. You should feel like you're hearing a secret. You should be asking for a secret if you want. It's like that's what you want in a really good conversation. And so I have all kinds of tips and tricks in the book for how to do it, but I'll tell you my favorite example that has, I think, to do with intergenerational differences in conversation. So my favorite story when I was a child was from my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother was a steel worker. She worked as a foreman in the steel mills. She never left after World War II because she loved having money. And then she had a farm by day. And so she would come home every morning at like 6 a.m. She was exhausted. She was the kind of woman who was going to say like, I can't wait to, to lay down my load, or whatever the word is. And one day she came home and there was this blue thing floating in the sky towards her, closer and closer and closer until it got just like maybe within 6 feet of her. And it was sexy Jesus, and he winked at her. Oh, did you get that? Oh, did you freeze? Did I freeze? I don't know if you can. I'm going to keep going as though you didn't. You're still here, or if I didn't freeze. I'm going to check and see whether I did freeze. I didn't. I don't think. So okay, I'm just going to keep going. So that story. Well, I don't know if I should keep going. 1 second. Hold on. Okay, cool. So Jen, what happened in that situation? So that story is so basically that story gave her the power, or that seeing Jesus kind of gave her the power to go on. And so what that story is really a great example of is an illumination. That was a very dramatic pause. So Melody, to your point, it was this perfect story. My grandmother could tell the perfect story, and so. I actually write about it in the book as this kind of like an illumination, a chance that when somebody tells a 30-second story that actually kind of illuminates something about the person, tells you about their values, has a prevailing emotion, scary, funny, awe-inspiring. Like I think that story is kind of funny and awe-inspiring, and also that it ends with a twist. This Raina, from most good literature, like everything ends with like a twist, and like we're like, oh, she shouldn't have bought that lottery ticket after all, and you're like, sorry, spoiler alert for that. If anyone hasn't read Shirley Jackson, you should get reading Shirley Jackson. But it's like, but it's like, and those are the kinds of stories that really stick with us. And so one of the things, Melody, I always like suggest, like just asking somebody, anyone like of any age, like what's a story? Like ask somebody about what it is like when they were 12. And keep it to like 30 seconds and ask them to surprise you and leave you hanging. And what happens is then people kind of come back for more, like they want more. So actually that chapter, Raina, was written because I have a friend who starts a conversation basically at 6 p.m. where she starts a story and it's still not done at midnight. And if you interrupt her, she's like, you're interrupting me. And so I wrote that short chapter being like, oh, this will teach you how to tell better stories. And instead, I just quit her as a friend. I was like, forget it. This isn't working. So
you're like, I'm not going to be able to fix this particular situation.
It's kind of like commit or not is kind of what I always say. Like, if you can't commit, then just kind of don't worry about it. But it's like, so that's one way. Also, I would say for intergenerational conversations, one thing that I really think is fascinating is don't always feel like you have to talk. Like, do. Like, I was giving a lecture in Hong Kong during a really hard time, and I was like, if you can't talk to your 80-year-old grandmother, learn how to make her dumplings. And that's going to connect you. So it's like that's still creating connection and communicating and making connections across that thing. And, I talk to my ancestors all the time. Like I talk to my great grandmother, like a while back ago, I made pierogies for the first time in a long time. And it was because like, all my great grandmother, my grandmother, like everybody used to make them for me for my birthday. And I was like, oh, I want to learn how hard this was. And I was like, this is hard work. I cannot believe I made them to go through this every time that I like once a year. So yeah, it's like, if you can't talk, make is really simply the way I think about it. And it's one of the what my team. Oh, sorry, go on, Raina.
Oh no, that's beautiful. It's so simple, but you don't think of it. And those things like recipes and little things are things you don't think about. Not to be sad, but sometimes until it's too late. Yeah. And I have my family, we have a bunch of recipes that my grandmother wrote, and she hand wrote them out. And one of the things I actually told my mom recently is like, next time I come down to visit, I want to pull out some of these cards. It's like biscuit and gravy and stuff that I know that she made so well. And I've never tried to use her little cards. I don't know why, but let's do it. Let's pull that out, and really sit and learn.
You just made me so hungry. Sorry. Right? it's funny. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about. I think making conversation should be a cocktail book. Like it's because it's like literally like one of the things I'll do is like I'll be like, hey, in the book I talk about like just name a wine after a friend, or name a cocktail after a friend, or something like that. It's like so it's just like a fun way to kind of to do that. So I was gonna plug something, or do you want to ask? I was gonna talk a little about something that I'm doing right now that I think is really kind of fun and interesting, which is
it the text message thing?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
I do want to talk about that. And I actually, what you just said gave me an idea, which may or may not be at all related to this, but we're gonna segue. We're gonna use it as a segue.
Okay. It's called a hinge in country music.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what we're gonna do. So have you thought about making like almost like conversation cards, or type of thing?
I have. Well, so my company is we do. The premise of the company is really let's help you as an organization have the hard conversations yourself, so you can kind of progress things forward. But the real focus of the company is content production. So I'm writing a lot for. I've just got a bunch of Medium assignments, which is cool. It's the first time it's like a very different kind of writing, by the way, Raina. Like it's like when I met with their editors, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not how things are written. And they're like, no, that's how things are written. I'm like, maybe on the internet, but it's like,
right. There's a whole different like internet. If you're like for blogs and books, those are not the same.
It is not the same thing. I'm just like, it's very funny. I have to say, like, it's like when I go through, because I do a weekly call with this editor, and I'm like, yeah, I think I understood half the words, and it's like, but it's fine. We actually built audio content. So somebody contacted me and said, "Oh, your book is like a curriculum. We want to do a kind of masterclass style, like a class style thing." And I was like, "I don't want to do a masterclass thing. I don't want to do like an hour-long video." And And so they were like, well, we also have this thing that could do text-based audio messaging. And I was like, if it's text and WhatsApp, I'll do it, because I have a lot of Kenyan and Nigerian designers as well. There's an Indian book. I just sold the mainland China rights. I'm pretty sure it's going to get edited down to like 40 pages.
Probably. That'll be fun when you get the like first like advanced reader's copy of that, and you're like, oh, this is like the blog post for the book.
Exactly. It's going to be a pamphlet. Like it's going to be a red pamphlet. But so. What I wanted is a way for people to take on the essence of the book, because not everyone's a reader, and like take it in a really simple way. Like I have a lot of CEOs and stuff that coach are like, I don't have time to read, and I'm like, okay, so we built this audio content. It's 90 seconds a day, and it's making conversation the audio content. It's 90 seconds a day, and it's me in the morning, and I'll be like, hey, Melody, thanks for showing up today, or hey, Jen, thanks for showing up, and here's a little lesson, and why don't you try it? And then come back to me and tell me how it goes. And it happens for 14 days straight. And by the end of 14 days, you're really sick of hearing from me. It's like you're like enough of Fred in the morning. But it's like, or you can pack it up and you can do it all in an hour at the end if you want. So it's actually like it's kind of ingenious. Like it's like we just launched it. We launched it just in front of South by Southwest, because I did Vivek Murthy and so the Surgeon General.
I saw that.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was really, really good. It was good, but it was fun. So that's happening. And then it's funny that you say that, Raina. There's two other things we're working on. We're working on a card game called Intentions, which actually has we have the starter pack is almost done, and then we go into all like it'll be death intentions, workplace intentions, sexual intentions. So there'll be different kinds of focuses on that. And then I have a secret game.
Period. That's it. A cliffhanger, and then I have a secret game.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to Virtual Happy Hour.
Yeah, and it's like, and you have to there's Easter eggs. I always leave little acorns in every talk for the secret game, so you can start to hunt for the secret game.
Okay.
It's actually, to be honest, it's not quite out yet because we're dialing it up. Neither is Intentions. The Intentions will be out probably next week. We're dialing up we're dialing it down, because the first time I played it, I was like, okay, team, listen, like I cried, you hurt my feelings. It went for 5 hours. I was like, I think we really need to kind of like rejigger this, because it's like, I do not want like people to like blow up at each other. But it's actually going to be it's a word that means pagan spring. So if you search for words that mean pagan spring, eventually you'll find my game.
All right, I'm writing this down right now so that I can look at it later.
But pagan spring can also be PS. Who knows?
Okay. So the text message course, is that what you're calling it? Yeah. A text message course, which is a brilliant concept. That I have a promo code that you gave me that I can give out to everybody.
Yeah, I know.
In the comments, you guys should see that. I guess on YouTube, it broke it up into 3 different comments, but on Facebook, it came as one big comment. But there's a link in there, and there's a promo code. All that information should be in there if you get all the comments right. I didn't know that there was a text character limit on YouTube. We've learned this today.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that either, actually. That's fascinating.
I can only assume that's why it automatically broke up into 3 comments, but there you go.
That's okay. Now
but there's a promo code in there, and you can sign up for Fred's text course.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, it's honestly, we redid it because I was like, I want to laugh like as much as I possibly can. Like it's like I want like tons of joy, and so like it's fun and funny and it's interesting and it helps. Like I promise you.
When especially if you're sending it out in the morning, you don't need to lay it on super heavy at 8 a.m. That's not where I want to start.
You don't need to lay it on super heavy at 11 a.m. By the way, 8 a.m. is when I got the text from that guy, the stripper guy. And I was like, really? This is like starting at 8 a.m.? I was just like, it's a bit much.
Actually, if he's a late night kind of guy, which it sounds like he might be, 8 a.m. He was waiting. That was for you.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, he got up and early so that he could talk to you about
or he never went to sleep.
Or he never went to sleep. It's also an option.
Yeah, exactly. I have a question for you. Is there?
Yeah.
Is there? I talk about it because it's like. So do you know? You must have in the bookstore Robert McFarlane's Lost Words.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books, actually, and it's and one of the things. I mean, I love Robert McFarlane, everything, and one of the things that I think is so interesting about Robert McFarlane is how he talks about like when you say so, or like a lot of reviewers will write about this, like it's like when you lose a word, you actually lose the thing sometimes, right? So it's like he's like let's not lose acorn for the word cloud computing. We need both in our. They're both good names. We need both, right? So it's like. So I think it's really interesting thing. Thanks, Jen. Check it out. I think you'll like it. It's pretty. At least it's easy. But it's what I think is so funny about So I was saying that because it's one of the reasons I don't talk about divide in my work and stuff like that. Is just because like I think if you say divide, you see divide. It's like I see like I have this thing where I see 11:11 every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you Google it, it'll often be like 1,111 angels are trying to talk to you, but it's actually a thing called frequency illusion, which is that once you start noticing it, you keep noticing it, which is that was apropos of nothing.
Well, you know what? I've never read Lost Words, but that is really fascinating to me because I recently read The Memory Police, which when
did that come out?
It actually came out in 1995 in Japan, but it was recently translated into English just last year. Okay. And it won the Man Booker International Prize. I'm pretty sure.
Good book.
It won. I know it won a prestigious award. And I read it in January, and the whole concept of the book, it's fiction, but the concept is that this civilization, they lose the memory of a thing, and then the word sort of disappears from their language, and as the word disappears from their language, the thing also, like physically, the thing sort of goes away.
Hold on, I'm writing this down. That's The Memory Police. I don't think I have read it. I'm gonna read it. That sounds so good. That's like totally my kind of book. It's funny. For yesterday, poor guy, one of the CEOs I coach, she was like, I don't read. I'm like, I want you to read Middlemarch.
Just jump in there.
Yeah, exactly. Jump in there. And it's the reason why I said this to the NYU Stern things, which is like, and I said, you don't have to read the whole book if you don't want to, although I think you should read the whole book. But it's like, it's the first 30, thank you for The Memory Police. But the first 30 pages, have you read Middlemarch?
I have not, but one of our booksellers that he used to work at the bookstore, he did this whole thing on his Instagram where he read the chapter and each night he boiled it down for you. And so I have gotten the Ben Cliff Notes of Middlemarch. And I told him when he started, I was like, please keep doing this. As a matter of fact, do this with other classic books I should have read by now, because I need like this boiled down thing.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah.
If you can. I mean, it's like I'm like really interested in that. Because it's like I've read it twice, but it's like I still feel like I could read it again. The first 30 pages, the reson why the first 30 pages are so great, and I used to give it to my designers, but they don't read either. But I basically like if you want to understand network theory and the way the universe is all interconnected, if you read the first 30 pages of Middlemarch, it does the best job ever of explaining how kind of we're all cosmically intertwined. It's a stunning book just because of that very thing. So when I was trying to get designers to say like, go talk to people, like learn how to have conversations in the world, that's like part of your work. I would give them Middlemarch, and unfortunately they never read it. So I was just like, they just big heavy thing they could hit somebody with if they wanted to.
All right, so I'm gonna pick it up from the bookstore, and I will read the first 30 pages.
Read the first 30 pages.
Of course, when Ben explained it, he was thinking about just telling the story going ahead. He didn't explain it in that way, but approaching it with that idea will make
it's got a kind of cosmic perspective in it in a way, but that lives in a very little village. It's pretty remarkable.
All right, so I'm gonna put the link to his Instagram in the comments as well. Oh, cool. So it's in his highlights. So if you go into his highlights, and then it says Middlemarch, and then you can watch like all of his like
his hot take on Middlemarch.
Oh, cool.
So
Wait, I'm taking this memory police thing too. Hold on. Sorry.
oh no, do it.
It's like I'm like, this is useful for me. I'm all down.
And all of these comments, by the way, they stay on our Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. So if you don't copy it right now, you can go back to Facebook here in a few minutes and be able to.
Oh, guess what? I own the memory police. No, guess what? I've read it. Now that
what? How did you forget you read it? I loved that book. I really loved that book.
Well, it's probably because I read it and then the pandemic happened.
Yeah, because it came out in English last year. I don't remember exactly when, but in 2020.
I feel like I've also read The Diving Pool. Like it's like I know. I love this author. So that's yeah.
Well, I really hope more of her books get translated into English now that The Memory Police did so well.
Yeah.
Books in translation are my favorite genre. And from the Japanese is one of the most, I read a ton of books.
And one of the hardest ones to do. Actually, I feel the same way. Like whenever there's a new version of War and Peace, I always like to read it because I'm always I love Russian literature. It's one of my favorite. But I should thank you. And I think I said this to you when I saw you. Independent bookstores, including yours, because I would have to do a lot of business trips in New Orleans without my husband. And the only thing that kept me faithful is independent bookstores.
I remember you said that.
Because I was like, either I'm going to go talk to somebody and then end up having some whatever illicit affair, or I'm going to go to a bookstore. And so bookstores really kept my husband and I together.
Because not only are we going to talk your ear off about books, we can take that time and do that social interaction for you. I'm going to make you leave with 3 or 4 books that are going to eat up the rest of your time that I'm not a part of. So you're good.
That's totally right. And you're still paying us. It's
right.
It's so, oh God, that's
exactly.
so funny. But that's why it's been so fun to actually go to bookstores in different cities and just bring them a book.
Well, it's working, Fred. It's working.
It's been really fun. So.
Speaking of that, everybody who's watching, we have signed copies of Fred's book in the store. I put a link to our website, but I will do it again so that you have the link to Fred's book. You can order it from our website. You can give us a call. You can stop into the bookstore. I think we did it. I think we did the pitch.
I think you did. I'm all good. You did better than me. I was actually what is she talking about? It's
I'm just gonna wait this one out and see where it goes. Okay. My creative listening.
Yeah.
Ears on.
I'm okay. It's and any last words, Raina? What are you gonna have for dessert tonight?
You know what? I don't know what we're going to have for dinner tonight because we agreed at around 3 p.m. that I wasn't cooking. No one was cooking. We were going to order something. And I've been here for the last hour and 20-ish minutes sitting in front of this laptop. So I don't know what's happened back there.
I will tell you one thing about the bananas in a jar. It was actually good.
Well, good.
Thanks, Jen. I really appreciate it for signing up. Thanks a lot. And reach on out, Jen. If you have any questions or thoughts, I'd love your feedback on it. But yeah, I really recommend it. It's just it's like salted caramel pudding, some kind of sauteed bananas, and it's in a jar.
I've never heard of this, but I'm going to Google it when we're done here and see if that was just a him thing or if that's a thing. I don't know. But we can credit that guy.
Yeah.
Fred Semi-Stalker from Rome. And we're just going to leave it there.
Yeah,
he sounds better.
And he gave me something really valuable, which was bananas in a jar. I really liked it. There you go. It was all for it. So.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me for Virtual Happy Hour, Fred.
Yeah, not at all. I would never missed it. It was fantastic. Thanks, Raina. Great. Your show is great.
No, thank you very much. Might change the name. We'll see. And thank you everyone for watching. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for commenting. We really appreciate it. Bye, guys.
Funny ending, May.